Hello everyone, welcome to this analysis video of Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. Wesley So playing with the white pieces here and Magnus is black. It took place in the finals of Opera Euro Rapid of the Champions Chess Tour, and this is one of the most complex games that you will see from an opening perspective, also preparation wise, and it is tremendous how these both players work on their game. So if you just witness this game, a lot of points will just go over your head. You're like, why did he play this? What's happening? So what I would do is I will ask you questions at the right moment, get you involved in it, and you try to pause the video whenever you would like to answer it. In that way, you will improve very quickly. Okay. So e4 was played by Wesley. Magnus replied with e5, knight to f3, knight c6, and the bishop developed on c4. Now, Magnus played knight to f6, and generally at top level, you see white players playing d3, and it leads to the normal slow Italian games. But here, Wesley was in an aggressive mood. He went knight to g5, hitting this pawn on f7. Black now has to defend it. There is no way he can do it apart from the move d5. So he played it, he takes d5, and now all of you should very clearly know that knight takes d5 leads to the fried liver attack after knight f7, king f7, check on f3, king e6, followed by knight to c3. And this is actually a winning position if you check this line with a strong engine, then you will realize that white is winning in these positions. In fact, the entire analysis of this game has been done by the very recently launched Fat Fritz 2 engine, which is ChessBase's engine, and it is considered to be one of the strongest engines in the world. So you can find the link of getting it in the description, but you will see that there were moments in this entire analysis when things were not clear. Working with a strong engine does help so that it gives you the right direction. Okay. So you don't want to take on d5 in this position because of knight f7. Therefore, you play your knight to a5. There are many moves here in this position. I believe knight d4 is one. There is also b5. But knight a5 makes a lot of sense. It's the main move. Bishop b5 check. c6, pawn takes, pawn takes. Now just look at this position and you will realize that black has very few things going his way. First of all, he's a pawn down. Count the pawns. He's 6, white has 7. Secondly, his pawn structure looks kind of ruined. Thirdly, I mean, the pieces are all scattered. I mean, what is the knight doing here on a5? But in return, he has the initiative. He has time on his side. So after bishop e2, which used to be the main line, black players go h6. Now the knight can jump back to f3, which is the main move. Knight h3 is what Fischer used to play, and you can check this out as white, maybe a surprise weapon. So knight to f3, e4, hitting the knight once again, knight e5, and once again with the strong engine, I think I've come to the conclusion that the best move here is bishop to c5. And this gives black excellent compensation. You will see that the pieces are not yet developing so easily. I'm castling here, going bishop f5. I mean, I'm easily developing all my pieces. Threatening also, by the way, queen d4 here. So that's a big threat. Anyway, Wesley So knows that bishop e2 line is now fine for black. So he went for bishop d3 so that he can bring his knight back to e4. Okay, knight to d5, hitting the knight here on g5, also preparing knight to f4 ideas. So he went back, knight to f3. I think h4 is also possible here, but he went knight f3. Now bishop d6, defending e5, castles, castles, and rook to e1. Here comes my first question to you. You know that black is kind of worse positionally, materially. You have to do something. You have to start playing fast. And that's the reason why my question is, what would you do here as black? It's not easy, guys. It's not easy. Try to think deep. Okay, all those who mentioned the move bishop g4, very logical move. In fact, this is the move that even I would think very, very seriously. However, after h3, you don't want to be taking on f3. So you go bishop h5, keeping this irritating pin. But now white plays a strong move, bishop f5. This is a powerful move with the idea to put the bishop on g4 to break the pin. Therefore, here bishop g4 is not the best move. A very, very interesting move is f5. Well done if you played this. Excellent job. I also was trying to analyze rook e8, which looks like the solid move here. But after knight c3, f5, bishop f1, e4, knight takes d5, c takes d5, knight d4. It seems like white is doing fine in such positions. So f5, and now Wesley went ahead and took the pawn on e5, knight takes. I will recommend a new idea for white in these positions, and that new idea is rook takes e5. I guess this is something that could become popular in the years or in the days to come, where bishop e5, knight e5, queen f6. Now look, the knight is hanging. You have to move it back. g5, knight to c3, g4, and knight e1. I believe that white has excellent compensation for the missing exchange. In fact, he has 2 pawns and also a very good development now. So this could be a good exchange sacrifice here. Coming back, he went knight e5, and now black played the move queen f6. He's hitting the knight. f4 cannot be played because the knight controls that square. What do? You have to go back. Now comes the next moment for you. White has snatched a pawn, but for that pawn, you managed to get your queen. So again, more material was fed in to get initiative. What is the move here for black? What would you play? In fact, it's the only logical move here, I feel, to keep your initiative flowing. And yes, the right move is g5. Well done. Well done if you found this move. The threat is the brutal g4 when this knight would be trapped. Therefore, white went for c4. Now, I was wondering if c3 makes any sense because you create a square for the knight on d4. But after g4, knight d4, think now, look at how your pieces here, all these active pieces can contribute into the game. Queen h6, threatening a mate on h2. And after g3, you know that this is not going to last very long after f4. This attack is coming at white's king. Black is totally winning here. Okay, so c4 was played by Wesley. It's all preparation and there are games here. In fact, a very well-known game is Vidit Gujarati playing with black against Levon Aronian. We will come to that game as well. So knight f4 jumped in and now the bishop on d3 is hanging. Where do you take this bishop now? He played bishop to f1. Now if white gets the move d4, you would be totally winning. So once again, you're short on time. You're sitting on a time bomb. What do you do next? g4. Fantastic. And once again, the knight is trapped. But white says, I'm okay to give that knight because I'm able to complete my development. And also, when you take on f3, which you have to, otherwise he will just put his knight on e5 and you can resign the game with a clear conscience. Take queen f3. White says, I have 3 pawns for a piece. Secondly, my pieces seem to have opened up here. My knight can jump to c3. My bishop is already hitting the knight. And this is, again, you will see that material has been given back in order to get time. See how it's moving. First, black gives material to gain time. Now, white is giving back material to get back the time. Knight e6 was played. An important move here is queen takes d4, which is a mistake because of a very, very powerful move. In fact, it's not so easy to find this move. If you would like to try, please do so. Yes, it is bishop d2, hitting the knight on a5. And after he takes on c4, there is bishop c3. The queen is attacked, and I think white is just winning here. There could be threats like queen g3, and all of a sudden the king may get checkmated. Okay, so don't get greedy for the d4 pawn. He went knight e6. Black says, I'm a piece up. Let me consolidate. White now goes for the move queen c3. This move deviated from the Vidit Aronian game, which went c5 here. The game is interesting, by the way. Just we'll look at it briefly. Bishop c7, b4 is what Aronian played. Vidit rightly took the pawn. Queen c3. He took, knight takes. Now the knight is hanging. So knight b7, and now bishop c4. This came at an important moment in the game where Vidit had to think and find the move rook to f6. It's not easy, but the idea is that after bishop b2, you play your rook to g6. I know that this is an irritating pin, but next you will go king f8, then maybe knight d8, so that everything is safe, and then you will start to create play via a5. But what happened in the game is that Vidit played rook to e8. And when that happened, bishop b2, he kind of got a little bit tied down, like after knight c5, bishop a3, knight is hanging. So he went knight e4, takes, b6, good move by Levon, and rook e4. And with the other rook coming into e1 and pressure here, very soon Vidit lost. f4, f5 also came in. That's the nature of these positions. But it was clear that black is holding in those lines instead of rook e8 if he had gone rook f6. So therefore, Wesley So comes up with an improvement here, which is queen to c3. Now the idea is to hit the knight on a5. So there is a possibility here to take on d4. If you take on a5, there is knight c2, forking the two pieces. And maybe black is doing fine here. Therefore, c5 is the correct move. And after bishop c7, you go b4. And this is actually the way in which white always wants to play. He doesn't want to go on a material hunt which spoils his coordination. In fact, he wants to put the bishop on b2 so that it keeps looking on this diagonal, and the other bishop wants to jump to c4. That's how you gain counterplay. Here, in order to keep the balance, I think you go for the move queen g7, which is very, very cute. The point is that if you go, let's say, knight b7, bishop b2, and now queen g7, already, okay, this is hanging. There's no time for it. But the point of queen g7 is that if you first of all play bishop b2, I can play knight f3. And now what happens is that after queen f3, there is queen takes b2 because the bishop is unprotected. And the question you may ask is, why can't that happen when queen is on f6? That's because after knight b7, bishop b2, knight f3 here, there is g takes f3. You see the queen on g7 actually prevented the g pawn from moving. These are little subtle points, but great defensive ideas for black here. Anyway, Magnus did not take on d4 because he found it too risky. He just dropped his knight back and said, I'm going to save my extra piece. Pawn to c5. Okay. Bishop went back. And now came the first new move of the game, which was b4. And I think that's a good move. d5 was played before in the game Mateusz Bartel versus Nasuta. This was in Jan 2021, just few days ago. CD was played, and after queen f6, rook f6, I think black is doing very well. So Wesley comes up with this new idea b4, and it also seems that his course on the e4, e5 that he has made for Chessable, he covers this, but I think he missed out something. We'll look at it, what it is. The first point that comes to mind is why not knight d4. But now you know why not knight d4. What's the move for white? Bishop b2. Big trouble. Big trouble. So therefore, the other question is why not queen d4? Well, after queen d4, here comes the problems. I take, knight takes, and I give you a check. The problem now is that where do you put your king? If you go to g7, there is rook e7 check and you lose the bishop. If you go to h8, which looks like a safe square, there is bishop b2 and oh my god, this is going to be horror on the long diagonal. So therefore you decide that maybe I come back and give up a piece, but after take, there is not enough compensation here for the missing piece. So first, it is important and very important to kind of destabilize this structure. And really speaking, what black is saying is that I don't want to be developing this bishop and getting my rook here because it seems unlikely right now. All these things are well placed. Let me create play on the other side. And that's why he tries to destabilize the position with a5. Okay. So b5 has been played. And now c takes b5 seems like an improvement, and I think this is what players with black should play. Bishop b5, a4. I tried to analyze this a bit. Bishop a5, queen g3, king h8, rook e6 because the rook is hanging on e1, bishop e6, bishop f4, now threatening bishop e5, bishop c4, and crazy position comes up on the board, which is complicated. Both sides have their chances. Okay, so this is what black should have played. Magnus went in and took the pawn on d4. Now Wesley saw here, thought for a while, and he played the move queen d4, which is a mistake. And this is why Magnus, I think, won this game. The right move was bishop c4 here. Guys, try to think about it a bit. And my question to you is that after queen takes c3, first of all, coming back makes no sense. Bishop b2, that's already what we know. So queen takes c3, knight takes c3, knight c5. Looks like, black is getting back everything here, like nice coordination and all of it. But what's the move that white has in store? Bishop a3, very powerful move, hitting this knight. Also, the king is so awkward. This knight is pinned here. So let's say you go knight e4. I take, rook takes, king takes, and rook e4. And I think white is clearly better here. Although black has two pieces for a rook, his coordination is not yet up to the mark. So queen d4, bishop c4 was the best move here. Wesley somehow missed it. He played queen takes d4, knight takes d4, and he gave a check here. Now, when he gave this check, everyone thought if the king goes, here, there is check on e7. If the king goes to h8, there is bishop b2. We saw this line analysis with the pawn on b4 and the pawn back on a7. But just this inclusion of a5 and b5 changes things tremendously. Guess what black played here? Black played the move. Try to pause and think. He played bishop e6. Amazing move. And I want to really tip my hat to Magnus Carlsen. Once again, understanding when to give back material. You see, for gaining back time. Because now look at this. Bishop e6, knight e6, rook e6. He takes on c5, gets back one pawn. He had already taken one pawn, now one more. So he's only a pawn down. But now every piece of black is beautifully developed. Rook e2 was played. I was thinking about rook c6, but here bishop e5, rook takes c5, bishop a1, bishop h6, bishop g7. Black is better. He's exchange up and is clearly better in this position. So therefore, Wesley went for the move rook e2, and once again you will see how time is of the essence. Now if you slow down once again, you may let white develop himself. So therefore, because like let's say you take on b5, knight a3, white tries to unravel by attacking the b5 pawn. Okay, so what's the move here? Rook f e8. Looking at the rook, he played knight c3, because let's say if you take, my rook simply gets developed. It's very strong. So knight c3, he took on b5, bishop e3 was played. Notice that you cannot win the pawn on b5 just as yet, because there is a back rank mate on e1. So therefore, the move that was played was knight c3, c takes b5, bishop e3, blocking, and here comes a nice move. Try to find it with black. What should black do? You don't want to spend time retreating because he will win your pawn. So what do you do here? Counter attack. Yes, not b4. Bishop e5 is a good move. Pinning the knight here, and then after rook to c1, if he plays, then knight d3 is strong. We reach a similar position like the game. He took on c5, bishop c5, rook e8, rook e8, rook b1, b4, and once again you will see that it has been like the time. Now white is also developed, so the time is back to equality, but now materially black is doing very well. It must be equal. The pawns are equal, but he has a majority on the queen side, and this is a potential queen which gives him an advantage. King f1 hits the bishop. Bishop had to go back. Pawn push and pawn push. Now always there are threats of b3, a2, a1. So you have to be careful. And he played g3 in this position. Maybe rook c2 was possible, but g3. And now you can't play b3 as of now, because rook takes c3, ba2, rook c1 is coming. And b2 will be met with rook b3. So that's the reason why first Magnus played rook to b5, rook c2, and now comes b3. Very strong move. A b3. Of course, if now rook c3, there's b2, just a queen. So a b3, rook b3. And now if king e2, there is rook b2 already winning. Take, take, and queens. And he played king g2, king f7, bishop d2. You could go rook a2, but then, the rook is going to get trapped in the corner with bishop b2. So he went bishop d2, bishop e5. And when he played bishop f4, here is where, he just took it. There's also one nice cute variation with bishop c1. What's the winning move for black? Bishop b2. Well done. And next, pawn pushes on. So therefore, bishop e5 was played, bishop f4. Black simply took the bishop, gf3, gf4. And now rook b7. Very cool move, so as to put the rook behind the passed pawn. Remember always, rook behind the passed pawn. Here, if it was white to move, he would have gone, oops, not rook c8, rook c7 check, and put his rook here behind the pawn. So therefore, very accurate move by Carlsen. And now this rook is tied down. It all remains to bring your king into the game. So king g3, rook a4, king h4, king g6, h5, waits there, pushes the pawn, king comes up, and he's going to lose all the material here after king g2. Everything is hanging, this pawn, and this pawn. And so here Wesley So resigned the game. Magnus Carlsen won. I hope you enjoyed this detailed coverage of this entire game. I think it's important to understand these games deeply, to question why not this move, why not that move. Not to just say, oh, Magnus Carlsen might have played or Wesley might have played, so we are okay with it. You have to question yourself. Only when you question is when you learn. And that's the reason why I highly recommend that you go through such complex games over and over again. And if you are looking for a good engine, the Fat Fritz 2 has been released recently. I'll put the link in the description for you to buy. Check it out. I thought the analysis was much easier for me using this engine to get more accurate evaluations. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Thank you all. Bye bye.